But let's move on to Friday night. I think it's another lackluster Friday. I feel like these Friday cards are shorter, smaller than they have been.
Yeah,
That's what it feels like. Am I crazy?
well,
Or is that...
there's no like Big Ten game. Like the Big Ten has now stopped playing on Friday nights, which usually get like a Michigan Purdue type game. But yeah, we just don't even have that anymore.
Yeah, I mean the big game is Boise State at San Diego State for first place. That game's at 10 o'clock on FS1. Kent State Akron will always be contentious as well. And then but yeah, not the sexiest card. Mike, I'm gonna throw it to you. Do you have anything for Friday night?
We got another first place tussle in the Ancient Eight. Cornell traveling to Princeton. The Tigers won by 7 in Ithaca earlier this month. I was high on Princeton earlier in the season. They kind of had some growing pains early on. Iwoma has basically been the same player now that he's in Ivy League plays, averaging 14, 6, and 5. And it's the Princeton team that I bought in on to win preseason because 4 of their 5 starters are either juniors or seniors. They can really shoot. They're 37th in effective field goal percentage, even better inside the arc. And what's interesting is generally it's kind of just like a pillow fight for rebounds in the Ivy League because there's just not that many established bigs. But Princeton this year has been a great defensive rebounding team, 6th in percentage nationally. So when you go up against a Cornell team that likes to run and gun from 3-point range, and you don't want to give them extra possessions, they're shooting and making threes at the 3rd highest rate in all of college basketball, 36% from 3 as a team. So I think it's important for Princeton to try to limit them, at least in second chance opportunities. I don't know what Torvik has this as right now. There's not a number on the board. I would probably go up to Princeton -4. I feel good about that. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Tigers, and a pretty light card, as you mentioned, on Friday. But this Ivy League matchup caught my attention.
Yeah, Princeton, I think -2 on early openers right now. And yeah, they're going to score. So if you like the matchup for their defense, because the Cornell defense is bad.
Yeah,
Cornell offense is electric, but
to add to the Cornell, their defense has been bad, but gotten even worse. In their last 5, they're giving up 82 points per game. So they've kind of fallen off a cliff, and they're not exactly going up against a murderer's row of opponents. So yeah, it should be a high scoring game, and they can really let the Princeton offense get a lot of high percentage looks.
Nice. Love it. Little Ivy League Friday night action. BJ, anything that you were targeting on Friday night?
Yeah, I'm going to go St. Louis against VCU at home. Ken Pom has us at St. Louis -3. I do like the Billikens here at home. VCU, they've been running a little too hot lately. And outside of essentially forcing turnovers from their press, their defense is actually quite bad. They're 343rd in the country in points per possession in the half court, while St. Louis is a top 100 team offensively. And St. Louis also has one of the best mid-major guards in the country, Yuri Collins. He's leading the country in assist rate by a pretty wide margin right now. St. Louis is obviously a very heavy pick and roll type team in which VCU does struggle defending. And VCU offense, like they do an incredible job of finishing at the rim. Like they're shooting over 60% on shot attempts there. But St. Louis is very, very good at defending the rim, only allowing 51% on the shot attempts there as well. And VCU, they crash the offensive glass at a high rate, and they're a top 10 team in terms of getting to the free throw line. But if you just take their conference metrics so far, they're actually 8th in the Atlantic 10 in terms of free throw rate. So a lot of what they've done of getting that free throw line has come in the non-conference. They barely were able to beat Davidson on Tuesday. This is a back-to-back road trip spot, so I like the spot here for St. Louis at -3.
Nice. See, the one thing that worries me is with St. Louis is that, and I agree with you. I think that this is probably the right time to fade VCU. Is that like, and Yuri Collins is an amazing passer. His assist rate is 49.7. You kidding me?
7% higher than the next closest guy in college basketball.
Yeah. It's just that he has these games every once in a while, and that's why their numbers aren't great against the press, that he'll just turn it over way too much, and he's just way too sloppy with the ball. Like, he'll have like 7 or 8 turnovers, just these random blip games. So you want to avoid that. But yeah, this is probably a good time to buy. Let's go. I don't love anything on the board, but there's one game that's going to be really fun. Let me see if this is on TV too, because even if you don't bet this, you're going to want to tune in. So yeah, it's on ESPNU. So Kent State and Akron, they're both 8-1 in the conference. You might recall last year, Kent State went to Akron, won that game, and they like went to the crowd and like basically were like, and the crowd was screaming F you, and then they were like ran up to them after Akron missed a shot at the buzzer to win it. And these teams hate each other. Kent State swept, and Akron actually beat them last year in the MAC tournament when there was all kinds of shit talk. And Akron blew them out in the MAC tournament. I think Kent State is the better team. These are two great defensive teams. And Kent State has, like, they have the guys that live for kind of these hostile environments. And this is when you get their best effort from guys like Sincere Carey. So I think they're going to go into Akron. It's going to be close. It's going to be tight. And I think they're probably catching one here. Yeah, so I want to go with Kent State, and then this will just be a fun game, fun atmosphere. So even if you don't bet it, try to tune in and catch some. All right, let's close things out here with a look at Saturday's card, kind of go around the horn style and just fire off what we like one at a time. I'll mention a couple. And another rant, this happens every year. I had Purdue fans in my mentions, like, why are you always fading Purdue? So I was like, all right, let me go back and check. Now, granted, I got lucky. I'm lucky with Ohio State, lucky with Michigan. I'm 5-4 fading Purdue this year. Like, this happened with Oklahoma State fans early in the year. Like, give it time. Like, just there's a whole season. If I'm lower in the market on a team, I'm going to fade them a lot. And if there's, but I'm 5-4. I'm actually fading Purdue this year.
Are you sure they're not bots?
They're probably bots. Yeah, some of them are bots. Let's see. And for those wondering, yeah, I mean, I won Florida State, man. I probably wouldn't make that bet again. Michigan
Big time
State,
no show on Wednesday from them.
Yeah, Maryland, Nebraska, and Michigan, who was lucky. And then I lost West Virginia early in the year, Ohio State, which we probably should have covered, Penn State, and Minnesota, which was an awful bet. So anyway, Indiana, this is the spot. This is one of the best spots of the year, in my opinion, at home against this Purdue team that has been playing a bit over its head. Like, just there's some shooting regression coming. They are wonderful in the interior, and I got to give Edey tons of credit. Like I mentioned earlier this week, he has the National Player of the Year award already locked up, but this is a pure through and through Indiana spot here. Give me the Hoosiers, and then the other one I'll throw out. I'm just going to throw out the obvious ones to start is Virginia Tech against Virginia. This Virginia Tech team, I mean, you can go back and look at all their close losses by 1 and 2, and then they didn't have Couture. And they also, I don't know if there's an update, because Virginia Tech doesn't have a ton of depth, but Maddox, who's also important, he's been away from the team for personal reasons. I think he might return this weekend, but this is a Virginia Tech team that's very comfortable operating in a half-court style. These are two great offenses. Desperation game. Like, even in their like Miami, like you had Nigel Pack score like 17 points in a minute, just go nuclear. In a game they were really controlling at Miami. Same thing happened at Clemson. Earlier this year at Virginia, that was back and forth until the end. So, yeah, I think Virginia Tech they're just right to go on a run. They did the same exact thing last year. I believe in this team with Hunter Couture back was really important offensively and defensively. So I'll be buying Virginia Tech here. Would love to get them as an underdog. I think they'll probably open as a dog and then become a short favorite, as they always take money. So those are my two obvious ones. Favorite spots of the day: Indiana and Va Tech. Mike, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I think we're all in on Indiana. And for the Purdue fans who are wondering, why do you keep coming for the Boilermakers? In January on the road, they skated by Ohio State by 2. They skated by Minnesota.
And Zed Key gets hurt in the first play of the game, and then Ohio State turns it over instead.
Yeah, all they had to do was inbound the ball, and
all they had to do was inbound the ball, and they win.
And then they only beat Michigan by 5 in Ann Arbor. So it's like they are clearly mortal. And
yeah, they barely beat Maryland. This is a team that can be got.
And the last thing too, you mentioned it, Stuck, how good Indiana is at home. They're fifth nationally in shooting percentage, but second nationally at home. So it's like they just turn into this supernova when it comes to shooting the basketball from all over in Bloomington. So yeah, I'm with you there. There's not a number out just yet for Gonzaga St. Mary's, but I'm very interested in the under. And this is one of those, contrast makes fights situations. St. Mary's 350th in pace. Gonzaga 29th. St. Mary's is very good from 31st nationally at 37.5%. But defensively, they just make it very difficult to get easy looks. Like that's the reason why the Gales are in the top 25 at this point. They're fourth in opponent made basket to assist ratio, 11th in 2-point percentage defense. They don't foul very much, so you're not going to get, freebies from the line. They're fourth in defensive rebounding percentage, which is huge for a Gonzaga team that can play fast, but by speeding you up, sometimes they leave you out of position and they get those easy putback buckets. St. Mary's has done a great job of tightening up on that. And then finally, the Gales do not at all turn the ball over, which makes it even more difficult to get your running game going. So when I look at that and the fact that Gonzaga has already played 3 really close games on the road this year against San Francisco, Santa Clara, BYU, I think this is just going to turn into a grinded out game that's played in the 70s as opposed to being played in the 80s or 90s. And obviously the number is going to go a long way in determining how passionate I feel about this one. But I think St. Mary's is going to be able to impose their preferred tempo at home.
Yeah, really interesting game. I'm curious to see where that number opens up. I think St. Mary's is clearly the best team in that conference right now. Gonzaga has major issues on defense. They're like in the second percentile nationally in post defense, which is crazy, but it shows you how much they miss Chet Holmgren in the center. And then, they're still trying to iron out a point guard. Now, they still run beautiful offense. It's still one of the best offenses in the country, but they have major holes on defense. And I think St. Mary's can exploit them with they're one of the heaviest pick and roll teams in the country. They run it to perfection. But St. Mary's is a team, like you mentioned, this will be a grinder, and Gonzaga's going to get their butt. It's not a team that I would love like laying like 4 or 5 with in this spot. So maybe we get like a cheaper price, and there's some early the market opens too low on St. Mary's. But it's weird. It's like the first time we've ever gone into a St. Mary's Gonzaga game where it's like St. Mary's is better. Like a lot of people agree with that. So we'll see if St. Mary's can handle the kind of role reversal and pressure of that. But I agree. It's probably more of a grinder, which suits them well, but then it makes me a little uncomfortable laying, if this opens at a sharper 4.5 or so. BJ, do you want to add something? And then where are you going?
Well, yeah, I was going to say Ken Pom has this game at 139, Mike, with the St. Mary's by 5. So, and I think you mentioned the Gonzaga, I know, which seems very low for a Gonzaga game, but I was looking up this game earlier today. Gonzaga's defense is so bad. I mean, they're outside the top 300 in points per possession out in the half court. This is a Mark Few team. Like, yeah, they are really, really bad. So like you mentioned, like I would love to play St. Mary's here, but like you mentioned, Stuck, I don't really want to lay 5 against Gonzaga with how good their offense is. So it's going to be that's a very, very interesting game to watch.
Yeah, basically, if I had to pop in a play to sub out and under, because at 139, it's a pass for me. If it can bubble up to even like 143.
And it may inflate because it's Gonzaga. You never know. But right now, Ken Pom has 139.
The sub-in game I would have is Villanova Creighton. And it's something, living just west of Philadelphia, this is discussed a lot amongst Villanova fans. They beat the brains out of the Blue Jays at the Pavilion, and they are terrified to go to Omaha. When you look at this series the last few years, Creighton goes to the main line last January, loses by 34. Year before that, Nova goes out to Omaha, loses by 20. Year before that, the Pavilion, Nova by 12. Before that, Omaha, Creighton by 16. So I'm going to stick with that. And it's not just a pure trend play. I'm also very high on Creighton at this point. I think they have it figured out. They're healthy. I think it's a double-digit runaway game for them. I'd lay probably up to like 13 in this game. I think the fact that Nova fell apart against Marquette, that's not necessarily a break-your-will moment game for them this season, but in their first year without Jay Wright, there's not that steadying influence where it's like, we're just going to keep hammering away and we'll get better as the season goes on. And at this point, I just think that Creighton is by far the better team. And in this series, they've been really aggressive against Nova. It's been one of the big games they've had circled on their schedule. So I'm going to go ahead with Creighton laying, like I said, up to 13.
Yeah, I'm a little. I was thinking about Villanova here because I think that they're undervalued in the market right now with Justin Moore back, who I think is really important, especially defensively. It's also like a facilitator, helps Whitmore, and he can get his own shot. So I think that they've been missing him immensely, and the market has agreed. I mean, Villanova's taken money both times. I think that their line has moved like 2 or 3 points from the open with more back, and he's only going to get better. But yeah, I'm worried about like with Neptune, just the state of mind. Like with Jay Wright, I would be like, they're going to be right back here, but it's just not the state team. And that could be just a loss that lingers because you pretty much needed that game to have any shot in at large. So now it's kind of just like this game is not as meaningful, and it's probably like, all right, like who cares? We got to get to the Big East tournament and hopefully win that for your season. So it could have lingering effects here on the second straight road game in a tough place to play. BJ, where do you want to go?
I'm going to go Kansas against Iowa State. Ken Pom has Iowa State -1.
You're fading Iowa State?
Yeah, I know, right?
Wow.
Yeah, in the most overrated home court advantage in college basketball. What this game comes down to, and I think you saw it against Texas Tech on Monday, is that Iowa State's offense just goes through these stretches and just becomes very, very underwhelming. I mean, for the season, they're at 0.95 points per possession in the half court. That's 297th in the country. They're 313th in field goal percentage from mid-range jumpers, which they fall into quite often. They're outside the top 250 in shot selection, spacing. This is just not a good offense. Now, they did take Kansas to the brink the last time in Allen Fieldhouse, but Kansas did shoot 28% from behind the arc in that meeting, and they're starting to heat up again. They shot over 40% from behind the arc against Kansas State. So what happens when Iowa State can't hold Kansas under 35% from behind the arc? And here's the thing is that Iowa State, if you look at their metrics, you'll see, oh my gosh, they're shooting over 38% from behind the arc. That's really, really good. Well, they don't take a high frequency of 3-point shots. It's a lot of dribble drive. It's actually a lot of low quality chances. So I think this is a good spot for Kansas, who has historically owned Iowa State. They've won 7 straight against them, 3 straight in Hilton Coliseum. So I like Kansas at a pick 'em. I think you'll see a lot of people on Iowa State who are coming off 2 straight losses, obviously blowing the huge lead against Texas Tech. But again, like you mentioned on Tuesday, Stuck, like if you apply any little bit of pressure to Iowa State, they just crumble. So Kansas, who does turn over opponents at a decent rate, I like the Jayhawks on the road in Ames.
Yeah, Kansas getting a little more from McCullough of late in their bench, which I think they need, and that's going to be one of their critical things to watch for the Jayhawks moving forward. Not shocked that you are fading Iowa State, but yeah, I think that they are shooting a little bit over their heads too, but they're not a 3-point line team. And yeah, if they struggle from the line, they struggle with turnovers, and I think that's going to ultimately be their demise come March. I'm going to go. I'm going to get your thoughts on this game, and then you guys can add. I'm going to go with North Carolina is who I'm going to look for. This is a fascinating game against Duke. In that last year, this North Carolina team, who basically swapped out Brady Manick for Pete Nance, they went on the road to Cameron in Coach K's final game at Cameron and beat them. And then in Coach K's final game in the Final Four, they beat them again. And North Carolina has struggled this year. And I think that, and last year they struggled kind of during the regular season as well. They also have depth problems this year. They're not getting anything from their bench. That's something to watch for them down the stretch. But it's not as important once you get to the tournament. You play 2 games, you play more of half court, and then you get 4 or 5 days off. And so in a way, I think North Carolina, last year they went to the NCAA tournament where they were an 8 or 9 seed. So they didn't have a great regular season. In a way, I feel like they've been just coasting, and you're seeing that on a night in, night out basis. You're not getting maximum effort, but this is a team with a ton of experience, ton of big game experience, and then big game players that are inconsistent, but just show up in moments like this and kind of thrive in an environment like this. So I think you're going to get North Carolina's best effort, because you could say our Duke revenge, like from last year, Coach K is not there anymore. This is a brand new team. So, I mean, yeah, you could pump it up before the game, and then, the crowd's going to be excited. You're going to get some calls at Cameron, as always. But I think North Carolina lives for this, and Duke's offense still has issues. They really, really thrive on the offensive glass, but North Carolina, really good defensive rebounding team. So, yeah, I think that what are we going to get? 3 or 4 here, maybe, with North Carolina struggling a bit. They lost to Pitt. I would love to get North Carolina as a dog. I think this goes right down the wire, and I trust the experience of North Carolina. I think a game like this is going to kind of get their juices flowing, and you're going to see. I mean, you got to remember back early in the season, this is a team that went 4 overtimes with Alabama. Beat Ohio State on a neutral, Michigan, and then they lose to Pitt twice, and so this is a team. I just think that they kind of know how good they are. But I think they have more issues than that. But you're going to get their, because they can't shoot, Duke can't shoot, but you're going to get them. I trust them more to shoot well with their experience here and handle the pressure of this game than I do Duke at home, as crazy as that sounds. So what are Mike, any thoughts on that game? And then where do you want to go?
I'm going to say 2 things real quick. Maybe Pitt's okay. Maybe
it is good,
Pitt is actually pretty decent this year. I think at this point, we may have to start taking them seriously. I had them plus 8.5. So I watched a lot of that game, last night. Additionally, I agree with everything that you said. I'm going to add on 2 points. If Puff Johnson plays in this game, give me the Tar Heels. Absolutely. Because I think they can keep the Blue Devils off of the offensive glass. And number 2, at this point, is there a player in the ACC more integral to a team winning than Filipowski is to the Blue Devils? When you look at their last batch of losses, 9 points in a loss to Wake for him, 14 points in their loss to NC State, and he fouls out against Clemson on the road, they lose. They got to have him play, and they got to have him be pretty special. So I think if Puff Johnson's back in there, they're throwing him, they're throwing Baycott at him, that experience. I think there's tons of value on North Carolina money line. I won't even mess around with the points.
BJ, any thoughts on?
I was actually looking at taking the over here in this game. What's interesting is that Duke is actually playing at a much, much slower pace than they typically have. They're 265th in adjusted tempo. But with that being said, I honestly think Duke's best path to success here is to turn this into a track meet and play a lot in transition. They're 34th in the country in points per possession in transition. North Carolina is allowing 1.38 points per possession in transition. That's 349th in the country. And obviously, Duke has been playing much better with Jeremy Roach back in the lineup. If you take his on-off splits, last 4 games with him in the lineup, Duke's at 1.16 points per possession. Without him, those 3 games in the ACC, they're at 1.01. So he's obviously very important to them. And North Carolina's biggest Achilles heel this season obviously has been their defense. They're pretty bad at defending at the rim, which is something Duke loves to. They have a high percentage of their shots going to the rim. The flip side of it, though, is Baycott should be able to have a really, really nice game here, because Duke has been really, really bad at defending in the post, 336th in field goal percentage allowed from the post this season. So I think mathematically, Ken Pom has this at 142. And yes, because of Duke's slower pace, that's why I think you're getting a little bit of a lower total. But given the fact that their best path to success is to play up with North Carolina's pace, I think that can lead to an over. So I'll be looking to play an over of 142. I'm probably going to play it right when it comes out, because this is Duke, North Carolina. It's one of the biggest games. Everybody obviously just loves to bet the over in this game. So I think if you grab it early, you can get a pretty decent number on the over.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I think this North Carolina team wouldn't mind getting into a track meet. You have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'll do one more. Let's go a little mid-major. How about Delaware +5 at home against Charleston? Charleston finally lost to Hofstra. Thrilling 85-81 game last weekend. Now, we are recording this on Thursday.
I didn't bet that, by the way. We talked about betting it, and it totally slipped. Are you kidding me? Was that Mike? Was that you and I were talking about that?
Yeah,
I didn't bet that. I don't know how it slipped.
That was my upset call for the weekend.
It was a phenomenal call, and I didn't bet it somehow.
Plus 315.
Yeah, well, I actually like it again here because you're going to catch Charleston on a back-to-back road trip. They're playing Drexel on Thursday. Now, it is important, the status of Jair Davis and LJ Owens for Delaware. They missed the last game. Not really sure why. And they are playing Monmouth on Thursday. So be on the lookout if those 2 guys are in the lineup potentially there, or for looking at any news. I mean, obviously with these small mid-major teams, it's very, very difficult to actually find injury information on them. So I have no idea what's going on. But if they both play, I like this spot once again. The last time these two teams met, Jameer Nelson Jr. did not play. He's one of the probably Delaware's best player. Obviously was a massive miss. Delaware went 3 for 15 from behind the arc in that game. When they're around for the season, they're shooting around 34% in conference play. In that game, Charleston did have an off shooting night. Like they only were 5 of 24 from behind the arc, but they went to the free throw line 33 times and grabbed 17 offensive rebounds. So the question is what happens if they can't do that, especially at Delaware? So if Delaware is fully healthy, I like them catching Charleston on a back-to-back at home at +5.
I'm gonna throw Oklahoma State out there against TCU. I mentioned, so I played West Virginia, which lost against TCU. Mentioned that earlier in this week, and it kind of BJ, I kind of was talking about why I didn't love the play but liked it. Is that it wasn't the best spot. Like TCU with revenge, and it's the first game without Miles. And a lot of times when that happens, like your first game without your star player, everyone else steps up, which is what I think you saw also in that game. For whatever reason, West Virginia didn't play 2 of their starters the entire second half because they just had bad body language, and I don't know what happened in that game. So now you don't have Miles. You could see the transition game was just not there. It's not the same. And where they did exploit West Virginia was just at the rim. There was like a million layups and dunks. Like, you're not going to do that against Oklahoma State, one of the best 2-point defenses and elite defense at the rim in the country. TCU can't really shoot from deep. They're not going to have the transition there. Oklahoma State playing better as of late. Musa came back. They're big, had 18 points. They're 7'1" guy. Lampkin was still really limited. Yeah, can we get Oklahoma State's probably going to be a small favorite here, but I think this is the second game. This is where you see the effect of no Miles, and they're not going to be able to get anything at the rim against Oklahoma State. It's going to be ugly, as a lot of Oklahoma State games are, but I like what I've seen from the offense of late from Oklahoma State, and their defense is dominant. And I think they're really starting to turn it on. So, yeah, I think that I like Oklahoma State here at home against TCU. Mike, you got anything else you want to add?
The last one on my board, just to give some people some relief, a potential bailout. I like UC Santa Barbara, probably laying 16, 17, going to the Matadome to play Cal State Northridge. Just, a team that can absolutely get you out of your offensive rhythm and force you to score high 40s, low 50s. And it's white flag time for the Matadors at this point in the season. They're 11th in the Big West, 4-18 overall. And UC Santa Barbara, the scheduling gods at least have been, nice to them. Last week they had to go out to Hawaii, and this week they get, a full week's rest before they end up with this game. So didn't end up throwing off of their body clock or their chemistry or anything like that. This is a team that they won at home against UC or Cal State Northridge, I should say, by 20 in their last game. I think it'll be a similar affair. So anything south of, let's call it 17.5, I'll go ahead and play the Gauchos.
Yeah, they just guess they can't score. Their offense is absolutely dreadful, which goes to show you how bad the San Diego defense is. The Toreros, who have a really good offense, have one of the worst defenses in the country, and everyone just goes bananas. You have 80 to Northridge. Anyway, story for another day. All right, good stuff as always. BJ and Mike, hope you guys found some of the Futures Talk Friday night and Saturday discussion useful to help you find some winners